Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show Hockey Sense. I'm your host, Josh, and today we're going to be talking about the Anaheim Ducks. And this is going to be a beginning of the series where we break down each individual team in the off season and kind of talk about the pros and the cons, analyze each team in depth, and kind of wrap it all up and give a final thought and opinion. That's kind of what my goal on this is, and I'm gonna try and be pretty quick on these. I'm gonna give uh, the important stuff. I'm not gonna go a whole lot in depth, but I'm gonna talk about the key factors and a whole bunch of stuff. But before I talk about that, I wanted to mention if you want to hear anything about like free agents and that kind of thing or trades, watch my two previous podcasts, or I guess listen to my two previous podcasts. My first one I talked about trades, and my second one I talked about free agents that got signed and that kind of thing. And I wanted to talk about those because in those specific podcasts, because I wanted to, there was a lot that went on at that time about those, and so I thought that would be a good topic to talk about. Because there's not a whole lot going on right now in the free agent world and the trade world. I'm not going to talk about free agent. I'm not going to make a separate podcast for this yet. Maybe later on as time goes on. But as of right now, I figured it'd be a good time to just break down each team, talk about each team, analyze each team, and go from there. So that's what we're gonna do. Um, we're gonna talk about Anaheim. We're gonna do each podcast is gonna go. We're gonna go in alphabetical order is how it's gonna go. Um, and so we're gonna start with the Anaheim Ducks, and then so yeah. So let's get right into it. Before, well, I guess I should say this before I go into the details and stuff that are important. Um, I wanted to say I am a Ducks fan and I am a Rangers fan, so I'm biased when it comes to this stuff, and so yeah, I Yeah, so I'll try to be as objective as possible. I don't want to be overly, um, biased. I'll be as objective as possible. The other thing is I'm going to try and keep these brief, and I'm going to try and do these on. I'm not going to do them every day, but I'll try and do them as consistently as possible. So yeah. Without further ado, though, let's jump right into it. So my setup for these is going to be I'm going to talk about like unrestricted free agents if there are any that are important. I'm going to talk about the overall team, the pros and the cons, and then I'm going to talk about the unknown factors of each team. And so that's how this is set up. So let's jump right into the unrestricted free agents. The big ones that I want to talk about are Hampus Lindholm, Rickard Rakell, Sean Horkoff, and Cam Fowler. Um, Out of that list, my biggest, the two biggest ones are Hampus Lindholm and Cam Fowler. Without those two, I would seriously doubt you guys, or that the Anaheim Ducks win a Stanley Cup. I seriously doubt the Anaheim Ducks win a Stanley Cup without those two defensemen. Rickard Rakell and Sean Horkoff, although they're important, they're not as important as those players. Hampus Lundholm does really well on offense and really well on defense. Cam Fowler, same thing. Cam Fowler's a little bit quicker than Hampus Lindholm. Also, Cam Fowler, I just I just read this in an article on NHL's website but Randy Carlisle was one of the people who wanted Cam Fowler. So I hope that's a benefit for Cam Fowler. I also hope that he likes Hampus Lindholm because both of those defensemen are definitely necessary. Uh, and definitely super important pieces of the puzzle. They are non-negotiable uh, defensemen that you have to sign. Like there's no way you win a Stanley Cup without those defensemen. Um, the other thing I want to talk about is Rickard Rakell and Sean Horkoff. Um, Sean Horkoff and Rickard Rakell are less important, but they're still important pieces to the puzzle. Um, Sean Horkoff was brought in for face-off reasons to help on the third and the fourth line for face-offs, and Rickard Rakell is just a forward that's important in the third and the fourth line. Again, overall, they're important pieces to the puzzle, but they're not the necessary parts to the puzzle. I think Sean Horkoff could be traded for a more offensive forward, and I think that Rickard Rakell could be kept. But those are kind of my thoughts. I could see both of them honestly being traded as well. They didn't put up outstanding numbers or anything like that. Sean Horkoff played more defense and kind of more of an enforcer role. Rickard Rakell was more offensive, but was still kind of okay overall. I would think that Sean Horkoff gets traded and Rickard Rakell gets traded as well based on current situation, but I'm hoping Rickard Rakell gets my thing is I think you should keep Rickard Rakell and Sean Horkoff should be traded. Those would be my thoughts. But if you have to pick, if you're limited on who you can sign, I'd pick Fowler and Lindholm way over them and trade those so you can keep Fowler and Lindholm. Anyways, but that is all the unrestricted free agents that are really quite necessary to notice for the Anaheim Ducks, which it actually isn't a whole lot, which is quite impressive. But they're still important pieces of the puzzle, so that's why I brought them up. Now let's move into the overall current team set up that of all the players that are signed and that kind of thing. So the pros, you have Corey Perry, Ryan Getzlaf, Ryan Kessler, John Gibson, Andrew Cogliano, Sami Vatanen, and Nate Thompson. All those players are experienced. They're part of the system. They know how to work in the Anaheim Ducks system. Now, with the new coach, Randy Carlyle, that might be a little bit different, but Perry and Getzlaf have both played for Randy Carlyle, so that should help. And Ryan Kessler, even though he hasn't, still has some pretty good experience playing for some coaches. So overall, I think good experience, also good young talent. Jonathan Gibson, I think, is probably the most important, or one of the more important pieces as well. I want to bring him up. Always plays his heart out every time I watch him play, which isn't a whole lot because I don't live in California, so I can't watch him a whole lot. But every time I watch him play, he plays his heart out, even if he loses. He just keeps playing, which is really good. Again, with Cogliano, Vatanen's a defenseman, really good on the blue line. Cogliano is a good forward, overall two-way forward, playmaker forward, overall really good. And Nate Thompson is just overall good as a depth player. Overall, those are really good pieces that you still have those pieces in your puzzle. The other thing I want to talk about is the pickups that were made. I'm not going to go into who was picked up as much as that the pickups they got were pretty much straight forwards. I think there were a couple defensemen and maybe a centerman here and there. But overall, through the draft and through the trades and through free agent signings, got some really good scoring, some really good speed as well, which is really impressive. And I think that's really necessary to keeping the Ducks organization alive for playoff runs. So overall, pickups I'd say are a plus with everything that have gone on so far. Overall, pretty good. Now let's talk about the cons of the Anaheim Ducks overall team right now. So my number one loss would be the loss of Anderson because Anderson was a good backup. I know a lot of people thought he would be a starter over John Gibson. I never thought that. Just because that Frederick Anderson. Every time I watch Frederick Anderson, it's like he stopped playing halfway through the third period. And actually, it was the start of the third period he stopped playing, and it was irritating to watch. Because perfect example right here, Western Conference Final. I believe it was Game 7. Yes, it was Game 7. We're in Anaheim playing Chicago, and Jonathan Taves goes and grabs the puck in the Chicago Blackhawks offensive zone. He's behind goal line extended, and he throws the puck towards the net, and he gets it on net. Frederick Anderson is not hugging the post. He's just standing there, and it goes in the net. And I wanted to slam. Every time I watch that play or think of that play, I want to slam my head against a brick wall because that describes Frederick Anderson perfectly. There were so many games that I watched him that he just gave up halfway through, and it was irritating to watch. I never had that problem with Jonathan Gibson. He may have lost games, but he kept playing through them, which is what I want out of the Anaheim Ducks. So overall, it sucks that we got rid of him because I thought he was a good backup, but I'm glad we got rid of him because he wasn't a starter, which a lot of people wanted him to be. So pro and a con there, but I put him in the con because it was a good backup, and we got rid of him. My other con would be the pickup of Jonathan Bernier. Jonathan Bernier did not play well. It's just over here. My con with picking up Jonathan Bernier isn't the fact that now we wanted a better backup goaltender. That was not my con. My con with picking up Jonathan Bernier is that you needed that money to sign Hampus Lindholm and Cam Fowler. Those are my reasons for him being a con, because honestly, Anton Khudobin could have done just fine with all the goalies that Anaheim picked up last year for whatever reason. Like, we picked up like 4 goalies or something ridiculous like that. We didn't need that many goalies. You only need 2, and we already had Anderson and Gibson. And with all the useless signings of defensemen and goaltenders, we pretty much used up our salary cap so now we have to get rid of Frederick Anderson. Now we have to get rid of Lindholm, Fowler, and Raquel. It's ridiculous. So it made, it honestly baffled me. So Toronto fans are probably, happy that they lost Bernier. As a Ducks fan, I lost a good backup goaltender, and I lost in the pickup of another bad backup goaltender. So that's kind of my thought processes on this. Now, he could end up showing up and playing a lot better, but I'm skeptical. My other con that I wanted to talk about is that all the free agents that are still up in the air. The reason that's a con is because those are not players that you can just simply say, I don't need them, and get rid of them. Other than maybe Ricard, Raquel, and Sean Horkoff. Those are the only 2 that I would be like, okay, I could see why you got rid of them as long as you traded for them and got someone else. I could see that. But Lindholm and Fowler are definitely necessary pieces of the puzzle, and you can't just get rid of them. They're not players. They're not expendable players. So that's my reason why those are cons. Those unrestricted free agents are cons for me. So overall, those are my cons. Again, pretty balanced overall. In terms of the pros and cons list, I think the pros outweigh the cons, but and they definitely will if Anaheim signs Hampus Lindholm and Cam Fowler. Then my list for the cons will just go straight, pretty much to nothing almost. So yeah. Anyways, let's move on to the Unknown factor. Now, before I get into this, I want to talk about what is unknown factor? Like, what does that mean? So, unknown factor to me is something that was either it's usually going to happen through trade or free agent signing, that kind of thing. It doesn't have to, but usually that's what it's going to be. And it's going to be something that was brought in or gotten rid of from the organization or brought into the organization that is something that I could see doing really well or, being a horrible disaster and not helping the team out whatsoever. And so that's kind of my unknown factor. Um, we see a lot of these where people are like, "Oh, this is gonna be really good or really bad," and I have no basis on how it's gonna help or benefit the team or how it's gonna hurt the team. So I figured it'd be a good idea to talk about why they're unknowns. So since this is my last point, I'll be kind of quick about it. But my first point is the pickup of a new coach. If you haven't been paying attention to the news, the Anaheim Ducks got rid of Bruce Boudreau, and they picked up Randy Carlyle. Now, Randy Carlyle was their old coach before Bruce Boudreau, and they got a Stanley Cup with Randy Carlyle as their coach. Now, the question becomes, why did you get rid of Randy Carlyle in the first place? And I'm pretty sure they got rid of him because after they won a Stanley Cup, they just didn't end up playing very well. And so they blamed the coach, and so they got rid of him. The other thing is I've read a lot of... I never watched Randy Carlyle coach the Ducks. Again, I live out here. I live away from California, so I don't get to see a lot of their games. And so I don't know his coaching style. Bruce Boudreau's was pretty laid back, though. And from what I read, Randy Carlyle is pretty, like a lot more strict and organized and that kind of thing as a coach, which is good. But he needs to. I did read a lot of cons about getting Randy Carlyle. I know a lot of Ducks fans are like, "Why did you pick him back up? There was no need for Randy Carlyle." There's other Ducks fans that were like, "We need Randy Carlyle." So, in my opinion, I say up in the air. I probably would have just signed the assistant coach as the head coach because it was the old Ottawa Senators head coach. That would have been my move, but you know what? We'll ignore that. And we'll say we don't know about Randy Carlyle, because this is a different team than what he played with or what he coached to a Stanley Cup. So I'm not sure on Randy Carlyle. It could go really good or really bad. That's kind of my thought process on that. The loss of David Perron would be my next part that I think is an unknown. He did really well in scoring goals for the Anaheim Ducks in the regular season, but when it came to the postseason, he was non-existent. So the question becomes, was that just because Anaheim just overall just didn't play very well in the postseason this past year? So was that because of that, or was that because David Perron physically was just not up to the task of playing in the playoffs? And I think it was probably he wasn't up to the task, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'm gonna put that as a unknown. What the real important part will say, will the players that you picked up with the getting rid of David Perron, will they help you guys get to a Stanley Cup? And if so, then getting rid of David Perron was a good thing. If not, then it's a bad thing. So I don't know. That would be my kind of my thing. My next thing I want to talk about is team chemistry. And I think this is going to be my biggest point in the unknowns is team chemistry. Because last year, for whatever reason, team chemistry just didn't work. And my question is, will they bounce back and become the dominant team that everyone thought they would be? And if so, if their team chemistry was a coaching problem and they're like, oh, yeah, now we're okay, then by all means, now we're on a good page, and that's, it was just a fluke season, or maybe not a fluke season, but just a bad, poorly played season, and it's a new season, new day. Will this end up benefiting the Anaheim Ducks with a new season and all that? And maybe it will. Maybe it will. So I'm hoping team chemistry, if team chemistry is good and together and everyone is like on the same page, like they were when they played all the way to the Western Conference Final in the 2014-2015 season, then it'll be an amazing season for the Anaheim Ducks, and potentially a Stanley Cup winning season for the Anaheim Ducks. If not, then it'll be a terrible season. Just straight up, it'll be a terrible season. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. My last unknown, and I know this unknown is also a con, but I think it's still an unknown because even though it's the pickup of Jonathan Bernier, and it's an unknown for this reason. Even though I think he'll play poorly, he's still an unknown because I don't have any proof that he will play poorly for the Anaheim Ducks. That is strictly opinion after watching him play for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, I will say this: the Toronto Maple Leafs are not the Anaheim Ducks. The Anaheim Ducks have a good prospect, they have a good team, and they, have a chance of going all the way to a Stanley Cup. Toronto, not so much. They could get to the playoffs, but probably will get out, first or second round as of now with all the pickups they got. But, Jonathan Bernier wasn't on a Stanley Cup winning team like ever. So my thing is that's why he's an unknown. I don't think it was a good choice for them to trade for Jonathan Bernier. But now Jonathan Bernier is on a Stanley Cup winning team. So we'll have to see if that ends up benefiting him. It might. But Jonathan Bernier is not the goaltender that I would probably pick. Maybe he'll play better and it'll help us to win a Stanley Cup. Maybe he'll end up helping us win a Stanley Cup. So that's why he's still an unknown. But overall, I would still... it's a con that we traded for him, but he's still an unknown in his play level for the Anaheim Ducks. I'll just leave it at that. That is my list. That is me analyzing the Anaheim Ducks. If you're an NHL fan or a Ducks fan, whatever, voice crack, leave a comment or a notification or whatever on your thoughts. Do you think these are this is a good list? If so, then just maybe you want to add to the list. Maybe you want to say like, I don't think or maybe you're like, well, I think Anderson was actually a pro that we got rid of him or whatever, and you just leave that in a comment or notification, and maybe you have different thoughts and ideologies. If you are a Ducks fan, let me know what you guys think. I've been a Ducks fan since I was a little kid, so I've tried to pay attention since I was a little kid, but these past maybe 6 years I've really paid attention to the Anaheim Ducks. And so that's kind of where my thoughts and experiences are coming from. But yeah, so again, leave your thoughts down below, or in a notification, whatever. Just leave. I want to hear what you guys think. And if you want to hear more of these, I'm going to be going through every team, like I said. I'm going to try and go through all of them before October happens. So yeah, I'm gonna try and do that, and I will touch on trades and that kind of thing as they come up as well. I might even do like, the beginning section might talk about the trade and then break into the actual breakdown of the team for that day or whatever. So tune in for the next episode of Hockey Sense. I'm going to be talking about the Arizona Coyotes. That is going to be my next team. Like I said, I'm going to be going alphabetically. So I'm going to be doing the Arizona Coyotes. So yeah, tune in to the next episode. I don't know if that's going to be tomorrow or not. It may not be. Tomorrow is a little bit busy on my schedule, but I'm going to try and do them as frequently as possible. But at maximum, it's going to be like one per day. So, anyways, guys, sorry that post talk was a little long, but I just thought I would clarify some things for you. So, thanks for tuning in to Hockey Sense. I'm Josh, and tune in to the next episode where I'll be talking about and breaking down the Arizona Coyotes. Thanks, and have a good day.